Hi grade 9s, this is Ms. Bresler and today we will be looking at number patterns. So just a few basics again. Firstly, the first term is always represented as T1. Therefore your term 2 will be T2 and your term 3 will be T3. Same as term 50 will be T50. When you look at the next little block over there, it says consider the following pattern. We have 3, 6, 9 and 12 and so on. So therefore 3 will be term 1, 6 will be term 2, and 9 will be term 3, and 12 will be term 4. So we can ask you which term is equal to 9, and you can then say term 3. Or what is the term number of 12, and then you can say it's term 4. The next block says we can determine the general term or the rule. So these are different words, but they mean the same thing. And we can find any value in the pattern. So we don't have to write down every single little number in a pattern up to like the 200th one. We can actually just use a general term or general rule and then work that out without having to write it out. Okay, so the next part, the whole Tn represents the value of a certain term. When asked which term is equal to a number, that number must be in place of the whole Tn. This means that if I'm going to say that a certain term number is equal to, say, something like 700, the whole 700 is replacing the Tn. It's not just replacing the T, it's not just replacing the N, it is replacing the whole Tn. So we are going to use these 4 little blocks to just remind us and help us out when we answer questions. So let's have a look at 2 examples. So example 1, you will see that is 3, 6, 9, and 12. So it kind of looks like the times table of 3. So just keep that in mind. So from the 3 to get to the 6, and from the 6 to get to the 9, and from the 9 to get to the 12, every single time I had to do something. And the way you get that difference is you actually say term 3 minus term 2, or you say term 2 minus term 1. And then it will give you a number, and that number is 3. So my constant difference is 3. So constant difference means the same difference. So every single time following on each other, it has the same difference. So let's have a look at example number 2. 1, 4, 7, and 10. So from the 1 to get to the 4, and from the 4 to get to the 7, from the 7 to get to the 10, every single time I have a difference there, or a certain something I had to add to it, and the way I get that or work that out is by saying term 3 minus term 2 or term 2 minus term 1. Again, I will see that it's 3 with this one, so it has a constant difference, so the same difference every single time of 3. Now you will see that even though these 2 patterns look completely different, they actually have the same difference. Now in these patterns, if they have the same constant difference, they're actually called linear patterns or arithmetic patterns. So both the examples have a constant difference of 3. We saw that, we worked it out, so we can agree on that. But for the first one, the rule is actually Tn equals to 3n. So this means that 3n is the pattern I need to follow. So 3n means 3 times n. So n is your term number. So 3 times 1 is 3, and 3 times 2 is 6, and 3 times 3 is 9, and so on. So for the second one, the 1, 4, 7, and 10, you will notice that the pattern is actually 2 less. 2 less means if I take my first pattern and then my second pattern and I write them underneath each other, they are actually 2 less. So from 3 to 1, you have to subtract 2, so 2 less. From 6 to 4, it is 2 less. From 9 to 7, it's 2 less. And from 12 to 10, it is 2 less. So what's actually happening is the pattern rule will be exactly the same because it has a constant difference of 3, so it's still 3n, but it's 2 less, and that's why I get my minus 2 from. So just as the previous example, we have 2, 6, 10, and 14 in my next little example, and the constant difference is 4. But it's also 2 less from 4, 8, and 12. Now 4, 8, and 12 is like the normal 4 times table. But 2, 6, 10, and 14 is not the normal 4 times table. It is also again 2 less. Again, what I mean by 2 less is if I were to write these 2 patterns underneath each other from 4 to get to 2, it's 2 less. From 8 to get to 6, it's 2 less. From 12 to get to 10, it's 2 less, and so on. So again, I have Tn equals to 4n as my rule for 4, 8, 12, and so on. But for the next one, I had to add the minus 2 part. So it's still the Tn equals to 4n, but it's 2 less. Now, instead of every single time having to see how much less it is or how much more it is, I will actually use a little formula. So in the first little green block, it says the negative 2 is the C value. So we will call that the C value. And the way we work out the C value is by using term 1 minus B. Now B, you will see over here, is actually the difference. So the difference is 6 minus 2, which is 4. So my difference, my B value, is 4. So I'm going to have this here. B is equal to 4. T1, that's your very first term. So T1 is actually 2. So I have T1 equals to 2, and I have B equals to 4. So that's how I can get my C. So I can say C is actually equal to 2 minus 4. Term 1 minus B. And 2 minus 4 is negative 2. This is how I get to my negative 2. So instead of having to write down the normal times table or whatever it might be that you want to compare it to, you don't have to do that. You can only see that you have to work out the value for C by saying term 1 minus B. Right, so let's look at examples on questions that I might actually ask. So for my very first example, we have 2, 6, 10, and 14, and then so on. So the very first type of question they can ask is, they can ask you for the general term. Now, there are actually two ways to work this out, so I will be showing you both ways. So the very first way is the way we looked at just now. So the very first way, we need to work out a B value and a C value. Now, we know that the B value is the difference. So the difference means term 2 minus term 1. Term 2 is 6 minus term 1 is what? It's 2. 6 minus 2 is 4. So I already know that my B value is 4. Then I'm going to work out my C value. Now my C value we know is the first term minus B. My first term over here is 2. There's my minus. And then B we just worked out to be 4. And 2 minus 4 is negative 2. So now I have my B value and I have my C value. And the formula looks like this. It's Tn equals to Bn plus C. So Tn is equal to Bn. B we know is 4. So 4n plus C. C we know is negative 2. So just keep in mind, you just want to finalize this. A negative times a positive 2 is a negative 2. So my formula, my general rule for this specific pattern is 4n minus 2. And you can always check this. You can say term 2, you want to know if it's actually going to be 6. So term 2 must be equal to 6. So let's just substitute that. Term 2 is equal to 4 times 2, which is 8. 8 minus 2 is 6. So you always can check if you actually got this completely correct. Then the second way to do this. The second way is a bit more of a difficult formula to remember, and it involves an A and a D. So A stands for the first term. Also, if you think about it alphabetically, you go A, B, C, D, and so on. So A stands for the first term. We know that our first term is actually 2. So T1 is actually 2. So already I have the A value. So over here, I already have the A value. Then the D stands for difference. So that's quite easy to remember. And the difference again is term 2 minus term 1. So 6 minus 2, which is 4. So now I have the D value. So now I can substitute that into my formula. So Tn is equal to 2 plus, and then n minus 1 in brackets, and then outside the brackets, the 4. So now I need to multiply from the back. So I have Tn equals to 2 plus 4n minus 4. Now I'm going to just look for like terms. 2 minus 4 is negative 2, so I have 4n minus 2. So obviously it will be giving you the same answer as the one right next to it, but it's two different ways to do it. Gives you the same answer, so it depends on which formula is easier for you to remember. I'm going to guess that it's going to be this one over here, but it's up to you. Okay, so the next type of question they can ask you is to determine the 100th term. So that means term 100. So the 100th term will be term 100. So instead of Tn, you will need to see T100. So instead of the n, you want to see 100. So instead of the n, you need to see 100. So we have the formula. So we're going to use the formula of Tn equals to 4n minus 2. And I'm going to substitute the n with 100. So when I do that, I have 4 times 100, which is 400, minus 2, which is then 398. So the 100th term will be equal to 398. The third type of question they can ask you is they can ask you which term is equal to 206. So now they want to know which term is equal to 206. So they want the n. So that means that they need to now ask you to work out the n. So the term is equal to 206. So the whole Tn, this is what we spoke about earlier. The whole Tn is equal to 206. So I'm going to go Tn, and instead of Tn, I'm going to say 206. And then I'm going to work out the n. So I cannot actually put something in n's place because I want to solve for n. Now the way I solve for n is by inverse operations. So I'm going to take the negative 2 to the other side. It becomes adding 2. So 206 plus 2 is 208. And that's equal to 4n. But I do not want to solve for 4n. I want to solve for n. So I need to divide by 4 on both sides. So 208 divided by 4 is 52. So then I'm just going to end off in a nice way here. I'm going to say this 52nd term. So n is equal to 52, but the 52nd term is then equal to 206. So T52 is 206. Now let's have a look at what happens when we are working with a negative pattern. So as you can see here, we have -2, -4, -6, -8, and so on. So let's see what happens with this. With this, it's very important to just keep your negative sign. So don't freak out about this. So when you look at the first question to work out the general term, again, we have the two ways. So I'll show you both again. So it's B and C that we need to work out. So to work out B, it's the difference. So it's term 2 minus term 1. So term 2 is a -4. Then we still have the minus sign. So keep the minus sign. Then term 1 is -2. So put that in brackets. So you're keeping the negative sign. So -4 plus 2 is equal to -2. So my B is then -2. And then to work out C, it's the first term minus B. So my first term is -2. And then I have my minus sign. So keep the minus sign. And then the B is -2. So in brackets, you say -2. We are keeping the negative sign. Then -2 plus 2 is equal to 0. So my C value is 0. So it's not necessary to keep it there if it's 0. So let's now write down my formula. So Tn is equal to -2n plus 0. Now because it's plus 0, it doesn't matter, so I can actually get rid of that. And then my answer is Tn equals to -2n, and then that's my rule. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to do the second way of finding the general term. So A stands for the first term. If you think about this alphabetically, you go A, B, C, D, and A is the first one in the alphabet. So the first number in the pattern that you have, so -2. Then D stands for difference, so that's quite easy to remember. So the difference is again term 2 minus term 1. Term 2 is -4 minus term 1. Term 1 is -2. So again, we are keeping this negative. Very, very important to keep the negative. That's what we've been saying the whole time. So -4 plus 2. -4 plus 2 is -2. So now I have my A value and my D value. Now I just need to remember my formula. So Tn is equal to -2 plus n minus 1 D. So D is negative 2. And I'm just going to put it in brackets because of that sign. It's something that I'm substituting, so I always put it in brackets. Then I need to distribute from the back. So Tn equals to negative 2 minus 2n plus 2. Negative 2 times n is negative 2n, and negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. So now I can just look for like terms. So negative 2 plus 2 is actually 0. So Tn is equal to negative 2n. And you will see again, your answers are exactly the same. Up to you to decide which formula you would like to use. So let's again look at two other questions they can ask you, even though it's a negative pattern. So the first of the second set of questions will be to determine the 20th term. So I want to determine T20. So instead of Tn, I want T20. So I'm going to substitute a 20 and an n. And instead of the n, I again want to see the 20. And every time you substitute, just remember to put it in brackets. So negative 2 times 20 is negative 40. So the 20th term will be negative 40. Then, third question will be something like, which term is equal to negative 200? So I want to know which term, so how many terms I actually have to write out before I get to negative 200. So the whole Tn will be equal to negative 200. And then it's equal to my negative 2n. So what I'm going to do is I want to solve for n. So if they ask you which term, they want to know which n. So I'm going to now try and get rid of this negative 2. And by inverse operations, I will divide by negative 2. And then I need to divide on both sides of my equals to sign. So the negative 2's, they completely divide out. So I have n left, which is what I want. And negative 200 divided by negative 2 is a positive 100. So the 100th term will actually be equal to negative 200. So T100 is equal to negative 200. This means that if I were to actually write down 100 terms or carry on 100 times with this pattern, I will then eventually get to negative 200. So you will see that knowing these formulas will actually help you so much, because you don't have to write out these patterns at all. You can just write down the first 4, and then by using the formula, work out all the other little missing parts instead of writing it out. So now you're more than welcome to try exercise 4 from the worksheet that we will be uploading.